Welcome to Beat Diabetes, where we focus on slaying that monster that has attacked your health. On today's program, we'll hear from a Pakistani man who rebelled against the diet of his culture and found a way to drive his blood sugar back down into the normal levels. Also, we'll answer the question, when fat goes up, what comes down? This is all the way from Pakistan. He says, I was diagnosed pre-diabetic with an A1c of 6.5. American doctors would say that is diabetes, but it's just barely. But his doctor called it pre-diabetic 2 years ago. He said, then I was diagnosed diabetic with an A1c of 7.3 later. That was alarming. Doctors suggested insulin and lifestyle changes. Accidentally, I found your channel and followed your channel and focused on a low-carb diet. Food without bread, or he says roti, in other words, that's what they call it, and rice, biryani, haven't heard that term, but food without roti and biryani, we cannot imagine. It is our lifestyle. When I decided to do without those two foods, no more roti, no more rice, he said everyone was surprised at home as well as in my circle of friends. Well, I think he's putting it mildly. That's not just going to surprise, that's going to shock, and some people are going to look on you as you're disappointing your whole culture by moving away from our traditional roti and rice and so forth. But he says, today my A1c is 5.3. Excellent. And all this without a single tablet or insulin. No drugs, no insulin, no medication, no metformin, and he's at 5.3 simply by doing away with a couple of the staples of the Pakistani diet. He says, it's because of you. It only took 6 months. Thank you for all of this. And then he mentions exactly where he is from. He says, from Peshawar, and I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing it properly, but Peshawar, it looks like Pakistan. And I just love that. That somewhere in Peshawar, Pakistan, there is a man who has excellent A1c, excellent glucose control. He's healthy, he's doing well, he's happy, he's rejoicing, because some old codger in Texas gets up to his little studio in his second story of his house and talks about diabetes and the need to cut those carbs and maybe do some time-restricted eating. I think that's just tremendous that it goes out this far. And I want to highlight his statement, we can't even imagine a life without roti and rice. Well, that's not just for Pakistanis. That's all of us. In America, there's things we can't imagine. Rice would be one of them, not so much roti, although there's a lot of Mexican Americans and Hispanics that couldn't imagine a life without tortillas. And thank the Lord, there are low-carb tortillas that you can either buy or make, as we've demonstrated in a recent video. But there's a lot of things we can't imagine. And when I first got going with a low-carb diet and realized I had to say no to potatoes, it's not that we just have one potato type of food. We eat potatoes in every imaginable way, even to the point of French fries and baked potatoes and mashed potatoes and just all kinds of things. And we can't even imagine a life without potatoes. But guess what? I've been living a life without potatoes for the last nearly 20 years. I'm doing just fine. I'm not going around crying in my beer, which I don't drink, but I'm not going around crying about not being able to eat potatoes. It's just my new lifestyle. It's the new me. And it's a small price to pay for good health. And there's a lot of other foods we could substitute. I can't imagine a life without pasta. I couldn't imagine a life without ice cream. I couldn't imagine, an African might say, well, I couldn't imagine a life without fufu or ugali or posha, depending on which nation you come from. They have different names for these basically doughy foods that are from grains. and they're all going to raise blood sugar. Now, there are keto versions of these, and you can throw in a lot of cabbage into your fufu or your ugali and change it and cut those carbs down by that way. You can take a smaller portion. There's different ways of modifying it, but you cannot just eat mountains of ugali or porsha or fufu the way you used to, my African friends. You just can't do it. And there are times where the rules just have to go out the window. If I was being assaulted by some mugger or bully or bad guy that comes along and starts beating me, and it's apparent that he wants to kill me, and finally, out of desperation, I pick up a rock and hit him over the head and knock him out, I wouldn't apologize for that. I wouldn't say, oh, I'm so sorry I had to hit the poor man on the head with a rock. I don't normally hit people on the head with rocks. It's not my normal thing, and I just feel terrible. I shouldn't have done it. I don't know what came over me. I just don't understand how I could be so mean and evil and cruel as to hit that poor man on the head with a rock. No, I'm not sorry. I'm glad I hit him, and if I had a chance to do it again under the same situation, I'd hit him again with that rock because I'm in a fight for my life. And if you're in a fight for your life, what is traditional has to be thrown out the window. You can't do things the old normal way. And that means you give up those mashed potatoes, or you give up that fufu, or you modify it some way, or you change it. You can have cauliflower mashed potatoes or mashed cauliflower that's a sort of a faux mashed potatoes. And there's all kind of ways you can substitute. As we said, you can have low-carb tortillas. So there's all kinds of things you can do, but you cannot do business as usual. And that ought to be on your refrigerator in big block letters. I cannot do business as usual in my diet. Things have to change if I want my health. So he says, well, here in Pakistan, to go without eating roti, to go without eating rice, that's just unheard of. Nobody can even imagine it. But I could, and I did. Why'd he do that? Well, he watched my channel, heard the testimonies, realized there was hope for him, and he said, I'm going to do it. And lo and behold, he went from 7.3 to 5.3, and I'm sure he's not feeling bad about it. This particular comment was left by a man who said, I check myself very often at the doctors. I love getting feedback from clinics and nurses which shows their total ignorance. Interesting kind of a fellow. He says, I love when I hear them say these things. It shows how dumb they are, which I don't know if that's good or not, but in any case, he's getting a kick out of it. He says, for example, one nurse tested my triglycerides, and the machine started beeping alarmingly. So she checked it, and she was shocked. What was the machine beeping about? Well, he asked her that. He said, what's up? She said, I've never seen a measurement that low. And what she was talking about was his triglycerides. She said, wow, sir, you must really eat a super low fat diet to have such low triglycerides. Well, she got it exactly wrong, but she just assumed anybody with this little fat in the blood, and that's what a triglyceride measurement is all about, how much fat is in your blood, must surely eat almost no fat at all. He said, no, on the contrary, I eat hundreds of grams of fat, but no carbs. She looked at me like I was mentally ill and said, are you sure? She couldn't fathom a low-carb diet. And then she asked, well, what do you eat then? And he adds, LOL. Well, that is so cool. But it's true. I couldn't tell you how many times people have told me that when they went from high carb to low carb, their triglyceride numbers went down, either a moderate amount or, in many cases, a whole bunch. And even Joel Fuhrman, who is semi-vegan himself, admits that a high-carb diet can mess with your triglycerides. The more carbs you eat, the more fat is in your blood somehow. And I know that doesn't seem logical. It seems counterintuitive. The more fat you eat coming into the mouth from the plate, the less fat is going to be in your blood, but it is true. We have assumed, and the lady says, well, you sure must have a low-fat diet to have these low triglycerides. We have assumed something for a long time that simply is not true. And wrong assumptions can get you in a lot of trouble. Well, that's it for now. I hope you found this helpful. If so, give it a thumbs up. And I hope you'll consider subscribing to this channel so you will be notified every time we post a new video. Don't forget to click that bell. God bless. See you again soon.